بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The first verse I'm going to recite is from chapter 40, verse 17. Al-yawma tujza kullu nafsin bima kasabat la zulmul yawma inna allaha sari'ul hisab. This day, every soul is rewarded what it has earned, and no injustice this day. Surely Allah is swift in reckoning. The next verse I want to recite is from chapter 45, verse 22. وَخَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ وَلِتَجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. And Allah created the heavens and the earth with truth, and that every soul may be rewarded for what it has earned, and they will not be wronged. I have Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim. I have recited these verses because all of you would know that yesterday Queen Elizabeth II returned to her Maker. She was 96 years of age and she had served as the Queen of 15 countries and the head of Commonwealth for 70 years. I recited the above verses because I want you to notice something. And that is that in these verses, God does not use the word Muslim. It just says, this day every soul is rewarded what it has earned. Whether it is an atheist or whatever religion that soul carried when it was in this world, in this physical world, it will be rewarded. This day, every soul is rewarded what it has earned. And that means how a person has done their duty. Princess Elizabeth came to the throne at a young age, in her mid-20s, at a very difficult time. Britain had been devastated by the Second World War, and its economy lay in ruins. It was shattered. The British Empire had started to crumble. Some colonies had already attained independence, and many others were demanding independence from Britain. And in some places where the British government refused to negotiate independence, there were guerrilla wars, etc. going on. Soon she was to be confronted with a constitutional crisis. But she remained steadfast. And as someone pointed out on television, she was a rock in a sea of turbulence. The world around her was changing at an astonishing speed. She'd been used to the Britain of between the wars, certainly before the Second World War and so on. And when she became the Queen, the country was still in more or less the same sort of place. As far as the social structure was concerned, as far as the politics was concerned, and so on and so forth. And she came to the throne as the defender of the faith. And she had very few non-Christians living in this country. You had various denominations of Christianity, like Baptists and Roman Catholics and etc., etc. In addition to the Church of England, of which she was the head. But certainly there were very few people of other religions, such as Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs and what have you. But this rapidly changed when people of other religions, people with other cultures, migrated to the UK. And they started becoming and became an active and important part of the British fibre, the social structure, the political structure, and so on. And she had to cope with all of that and deal with all of that. Sometimes she even fell out of favor with the British public, but she still had to deal with that. She still had to do her duty. And through all of this, there was one thing to which she remained true, and that was her constitutional duty as the Queen and the head of the Commonwealth. Whatever the circumstances were, she followed and obeyed the law and the tradition as was required of her. And sometimes, of course, it led to difficulties which had to be resolved, because it takes a long time to change established values and thinking. Certainly, the thinking of the establishment, which wants to live in generally what they regard as the golden age of whatever society it is. Both my wife's and my first memory of the Queen is when she visited Pakistan. My wife reminded me of that, although we lived in different cities, etc. And I remember that school children were given a day off to go and see the Queen. And to entice us, we were told that if we went to whatever the spot was, it was actually, in my case, it was the mall, the mall in Mall Road, as it was called in Pakistan. And in my wife's case, it was Murray Road. I don't know about my wife, but certainly we were treated with some fruit and some sweets and mithai and so on. And we thought it was absolutely wonderful. We lined up, and I still remember the limousine passing us by with the Queen and the Duke waving to us. And everyone in the crowd, they didn't pick us out specifically to wave at. At that time, little did we know that a time will come when we would migrate to the UK and eventually become her subjects. And with these changes that I mentioned, we saw her become from the defender of faith to literally defender of faiths. I know the oath of office that she took said that she'll be a defender of faith. But in practice, she became a defender of faiths. One example of this is the aftermath of 9/11, when the actions of some, what can one say, madmen created such hatred for all Muslims, that life for Muslims became very difficult in all of these countries, in UK, all over Europe, in the United States, and so on. In New York, for example, some Sikhs were killed. Why? Simply because they had beards. And when people saw pictures of the extremists on television, they saw people with beards. So they simply killed them. And Muslims were literally afraid to go out into the street because they didn't know what would happen to them. Even in this country, Muslims, when they went out, they were shouted at, they were spat at, and so on. And in a way, it is understandable. We'd had Lockerbie, and then we had this heinous crime. And of course, people in power, the politicians, made pious statements about, Muslims should feel safe and no one should take the law into their own hands and so on and so forth. But what Queen Elizabeth did was something very simple and very effective. And that was that she arranged for her to visit a mosque. And this was announced on the radio, on television, and so on. And her visit was widely publicized all over the media. And people saw her go to the mosque. They saw her remove her shoes. They saw her cover her head and then go in and talk to the Imam and the congregation pleasantly and nicely. And that simple act of her showing faith calmed the nerves. Before her visit, Muslims were afraid. They were afraid of security services. They were afraid of the police. They were afraid of white extremists, and the list goes on. But that simple act of visiting a mosque and talking to people nicely and so on did much more than anything else could have done to calm Muslim nerves and, of course, to give confidence to the other communities living in the UK that not all Muslims but terrorists, as people had come to believe. And this is just one of her acts of kindness. I've had the privilege of meeting some members of the royal family on rare occasions. And I found them to be down to earth and humble and human. And throughout her life, Elizabeth II did her duty. And she was working and going through her red boxes and meeting the new Prime Minister or inviting the new leader of the Conservative Party to form the government and become her Prime Minister, even 2 days before she passed away. Her frailty was obvious, and we noticed that there were bruises on her hands, maybe where doctors had inserted drips and so on to drip energy-giving liquids into her to give her strength, etc. But duty had to be done, and she did. The most poignant moment to me was her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral during the COVID, when you saw her. The government had made a law that there should be social distancing. People should be a certain distance apart from each other. And you saw her sitting all alone at a time when people need to be hugged and kissed and loved. She sat there on her own, upholding the British Constitution and the British law. That whatever the circumstances, whatever the situation, law had to be obeyed. And it must have been terribly difficult for her. That at the time when she needed consoling, at the time that she needed comfort, she couldn't get it from the people that she loved and from the people who loved her, the children and the grandchildren, and so on. There is much else to be said. After all, it was a reign of 70 years, over 15 countries, in addition to, I think, the 35 countries of the Commonwealth. But I would say that for the Muslims, in a way, she symbolized Najashi or Negus of Ethiopia, who gave sanctuary to Muslims at the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That at the time of our difficulty in the UK, she gave us sanctuary by her symbolic act of visiting that mosque. And the Holy Quran tells us to return a favor with a favor. So I say, rest in peace, Elizabeth II. You will, in the words of the Holy Quran that I have recited, see the reward of all that you have done. And we pray that your family finds the patience to bear your loss. Hello? Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim innahu ta'ala jawadun karimun malikun bir raufur rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil wa fala hadiya lahu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم واقتل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. ربنا. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أستغفر الله. أستغفر الله. وراتنا في الدنيا حسنة. Thank you for joining us for our Friday service. I just want to remind everyone that Pakistan and Pakistanis are in great difficulty. So please do whatever you can to help them. If you can help them with your prayers, you can help them with your time, you can help them with your money in whatever way you can. The Lahori Ahmadis believe that in words of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Rahmatullah Alayh, when a man indeed sits in front of you, never think about his religion or sect or caste or creed. Thank Allah that He put you in a position where you can help one of His creatures who is in difficulty. So please, because it's a long struggle that Pakistan has ahead of them, with all the crops for this year destroyed, next year there will be starvation, etc. So with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you may be, may Allah keep the whole of humanity under His protection, free from harm and difficulty. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.